I am a soul blazer. I change lives, I touch people's souls, and I open them up. I teach people how to be present and to be in their authentic soul. Do you guys know what imposters are? These untrained imposters, they reside on the stage of our brain, and they're trying to control us. But usually what happens is they make things worse. But the good news is that we can control them. We could take over and we could teach them to work for us instead of against us. Hi, Roger.
I can hear you.
Can you flip your picture landscape?
I don't know why does that happen? We were fine in the rehearsal.
There we go. That's fun.
Is that?
But no, keep going. Keep going. Yep. But can you make it landscape?
I don't think I'm going to be able to make it landscape.
All right.
I mean, I can try. I mean, am I good or?
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Yay. And you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Awesome. Let's go for it. So hi, Roger. So great to have you here. I want to share with you a little bit who Roger is. He is a rare voice at the crossroads of law, politics, and storytelling. And we all know I love storytelling so much, and he is a master. He's a TV writer. He's done shows like Law and Order, SVU, Saving Grace, The Closer. He's an attorney and a political speechwriter who has staffed 4 U.S. senators, 2 congressmen, and crafted speeches for leaders like President Joe Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. With degrees from Vassar, Penn Law, and Johns Hopkins, Roger brings intellect. He brings heart and purpose to every word he writes. And I love it. I'm a fan of his work and I watch his shows and I'm like, oh! So Roger has studied spirituality in India, Egypt, Peru, and Greece, some of my favorite places. He has developed a cohesive practice centered in the law of attraction and the power of positive thinking, which he just did, making his camera landscape. He's doing it, guys, right before your eyes. So here's a taste of who Roger is. He just did a recent TEDx talk. Can this spiritual technology help you survive AI?
So why give this talk now? Well, because this is the most volatile moment in human history. We are all in our own little boats, headed into uncharted waters where AI will change the course of our lives with or without our permission. Manifestation is, simply put, the art of thriving regardless of circumstances, learning to think things into being. And I believe if we learn to hone this craft now, AI is more likely to remain our tool instead of, forgive me, writer, our terminator.
Ah, so good, Roger, and so needed. I want all of you to go to YouTube and check that out. And we'll have a link when we post on Instagram, so look out for it, and LinkedIn and YouTube and everything else. So Roger, you've written for both Hollywood and the halls of Congress, and even for world leaders. So few people know how to use story to both move hearts and history the way you do. So I want to start by asking, since you've written for both Hollywood and politics, can you share a moment when you saw your words on the screen or in a speech shift someone's perspective in real time?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. And thank you, Lisa, and I apologize for the technological glitches, but I'm really excited to be with you and with your audience. I think this is a really important podcast, and I want to give you my all. So that's a good question. I would say that politically, some of the greatest moments of my life have been sitting on the Senate floor in the little chair they bring the staff, right behind a senator when a senator was giving my speech. And my favorite speech deliverer of all was Paul Wellstone. He was a senator from Minnesota. He was a precursor to Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, and he was one of the greatest men I've ever known. And when he would give a speech and I would sit behind him, we couldn't necessarily see the world watching it, although it was on C-SPAN. but we could watch the faces of the pages. You know, the young students who were there, and they would line up to listen to Paul, and they would sit there in rapture, and I could see their entire worldview shifting. And I can't credit myself as much as I can credit Paul Wellstone, who carried with him such a gravitas and a sincerity and humanity that it has inspired me ever since.
Mm.
And for TV writing, I never, you know, a lot of my shows, the very first words that I ever wrote were uttered on the air by, on this TV show called Century City. And Viola Davis was the first person who read aloud my words. And seeing someone like her take my material and again elevate it, I felt like I was part of a great process. I don't know what happened with the audience, but I do know what happened with me. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that is incredible. And as a writer, also seeing your words spoken by one of the greatest actors of all time, that is inspiring. And you know you're doing something truly profound for the world when you're writing something, which is what you usually do, is conscious writing. You don't just write garbage for people to, you know, take on. You really are thought-provoking and are spiritually conscious, which I love.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I think that part of the goal here, I didn't come, you know, my last job in the Senate, I was the chief education counsel to the Democratic Party. I was responsible for all the education budget. And I had a hand in writing the Higher Education Act and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and others. And I didn't decide to come to Los Angeles because I wanted to dumb anything down. I really recognized that so much information is being passed on to kids and adults in America through the mediums that you and I care about. And I wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah, you're glitching. You're coming in and out. I don't know if it's your phone or the connection. So I missed some of that. Yeah, you're going in and out. I don't know if the audience is hearing that, but I'm assuming yes.
Would you like me to repeat that then?
Yes, please.
Okay, what I was just saying is that my last title when I was working in the Senate was I was the chief education counselor to the Democratic Party. And I had a hand in writing all major education legislation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I didn't leave that post because I wanted to go to Hollywood and dumb anything down. I left that post because I really recognized that the values of the American audience aren't necessarily being taught in the classroom.
Yeah.
They're being taught on screens like this. Hopefully not screens like mine, which are glitchy, but they're being taught in movies and TV shows. That's where the values come from.
Yes.
And I wanted to be a part of crafting uplifting values wherever I could.
Yes. Lisa just left a comment there. She worked with you, which was nice. Did you read that?
No, I haven't been able to.
Yeah, that was there she is. She loved working on the Biden campaign commercials with you.
Oh, Lisa, it's so nice. Yes, of course.
Yeah. That's wonderful. How did you even get into that work?
The Hollywood or the politics?
Politics.
Well, I think part of it was that I was raised in New Haven, Connecticut, and the guy who drove my carpool when I was a kid was Joe Lieberman. He drove my carpool to elementary school, to my Jewish elementary school. And so I kind of had him, and I worked on my very first campaign when I was 6 years old, handing out flyers for him when he was running for state senate. So I had it a little bit in my blood. But I think the larger thing was I became a civil rights lawyer, and Elizabeth Warren was one of my professors.
Oh,
and she inspired me to care about civil rights. And then when I graduated from law school, I started practicing civil rights, and I got the chance to work with the Clinton campaign, with Hillary Clinton. And just at that time, and I wish everybody in your audience, because you have such an educated audience and a passionate audience, I wish that all of us got to know the Hillary Clinton that I and many privileged people got to know in the beginning of her career, because she was the best.
I agree.
And she was the best. And I think that the attacks of politics brought her down and made her guarded. And you cannot succeed in politics as a guarded person.
Mm-hmm. Yes. God, so you were exposed to these powerhouses early on. So it did get in your blood. And then you wanted to also make movies and TV shows.
Well, while I was working in the Senate, I got my master's degree in creative writing from Johns Hopkins, because I knew that someday I was going to want to write.
Okay.
But if Senator Wellstone, who I was talking about earlier, if he hadn't been killed in a plane crash about 20 years ago, I might never have left politics. I could never have stopped working for him. But he was killed and possibly
Mm.
assassinated in a small plane that went down in Minnesota, and he died along with his wife and his daughter and three members of his staff, one of whom I had heavily recruited to come work for him because I wanted somebody else to travel with him more because I didn't like going back to Minnesota too often. And her name was Mary McAvoy, and
Mm.
she passed away and she left three children behind. But I feel the loss of Paul Wellstone and his wife and his daughter and his staff every single day. And that's what brought me to Los Angeles, because I felt once they passed away, I realized it's a plane that I didn't have a ticket to be on that plane, but it's the kind of plane I could have been on. And
Hmm.
if I had died then, people would have said of me, Roger loved what he was doing, but nobody who knew me well could have said Roger was doing what he loved. And
Hmm.
that's what brought me to Los Angeles.
Mm. Okay, that's profound. So you decided to shift into a different way of expressing yourself and getting shifting consciousness.
Right.
Uh,
And thank goodness for Aaron Sorkin, because he had The West Wing on the air at the time, and I was able to write a West Wing script, and it was very well received, and that really launched my career.
yeah. Okay. So what have been your greatest spiritual influences?
Well, I think when I came to town, I really didn't have a very active spiritual practice. And one of the things I love about Los Angeles is not just that it's a creative community, and it's not just a place where people are doing things that they love, but it's also a place where God's on the table. Like, God is in the conversation. You can enter any room in Los Angeles and have a conversation about spirituality, and you're not looked at as if you're out of place, which makes it a little bit different from Washington, D.C. And so the conversation in Washington tends to be more of a religious conversation, less of a spiritual one. So when I came here, I fell in with a lot of people who wanted to talk about meditation and who wanted to travel. I ended up going to Egypt, and I ended up going to Peru, and I ended up going to all these countries and studying spirituality. And I developed a practice around the Course in Miracles. And one of my closest friends for a long time was Marianne Williamson. We shared our interest in spirituality and our interest in politics. And then
Yeah, I
about
love
five,
Marianne.
yeah. And
Yeah.
about 5 years ago, I started focusing on Abraham Hicks. And
Hmm.
that was, I think, a real launching pad for a new level of spiritual involvement and engagement for me, because I felt it was a very simple message, a message that I could follow, a message that resonated for me, and a message that worked. So that's been my main focus for the last 5 years.
Yeah, still, if you just Google her, I mean, it's amazing. All of them just are so powerful. I mean, the
Yes,
message lasted, nothing got old. So that means it's really the truth, the core of spirituality.
I
Sometimes you
believe that.
someone 10 or 15 years later and like, oh my God, cringy, or that's where we were at spiritually. But Hicks, it's like, so powerful. I love those were your two spiritual influences, and those were mine too.
Well, wonderful. I'm glad you. And I actually just got back from a Abraham Hicks cruise in Canada, and I was
Oh,
on the hot seat for 45 minutes, and I can't even remember all the things that were discussed because it was so much was coming at me. But I got the video, and I can't wait till we watch it.
oh my God, I'd love to see that. I didn't know she was still doing those cruises.
Oh, she's just the best.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, what is the law of attraction to you?
Well, the law of attraction is basically the idea. And again, I think you probably have a mix of people in your audience, people who already get it and they understand it, and people who are maybe a little bit skeptical. I tend to try and speak to the skeptical people. That's what my TED Talk was about. The law of attraction for me is just about controlling your mood and being aware that your mood really has an impact on your day. So if you're in a bad mood, bad things tend to happen. If you're in a good things tend to happen. And you can control your mood simply by choosing what you're focusing on. And in this exact moment, Lisa, you and I could think of a million things to be miserable about. There are legitimately millions of things to bring us down if we wanted to focus on them. There are also a million things we could be positive about. And in fact, if we're really doing the work, we can even find some of the positive in those miserable things. Now, I'm not talking about being loosey-goosey and just saying, having wide spiritual eyes and saying everything's always wonderful. I'm talking about just being aware that how I think and how I feel has an impact on my
Oh, you're
circumstances.
glitching.
So at what point did it start glitching? How I think and how I feel?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just believe that how I think and how I feel has an impact on my circumstances.
Yeah. So
Did that come across?
how do you control that? Like, do you have a morning routine, or do you, when something happens, just like now, we were doing this and it was glitched and it wasn't working, someone would be going, oh, I can't believe this, and I can't, and they'd get nervous and anxiety, and that didn't happen to you. So how do you control it when it happens in the moment?
I'll tell you exactly what I did in that
Tell
moment.
me.
I looked, in all seriousness, Lisa, I looked at your face.
Hmm.
Your face didn't freeze on my screen, and you have such a warm smile, and I have such warm feelings about you that I just thought about, oh, I'm just on the call with Lisa. And
Exactly.
that made me that's what I focused on.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, and there's always a choice of what to focus on. I was talking to my sister last night, and my sister was like saying, I don't think that I want to even control my moods. And I get that. That's totally fine for my sister, and I love my sister. For me, I want to be on top of my moods. I want to be unconditionally happy. Now, let me make that clear. That doesn't mean being universally happy. There's spice in life. I don't mind being sad. There's moments that you want to indulge in the sadness. But I do want to not require a condition in order to be happy. I don't want to, this call doesn't have to go perfectly for me to be happy. I can focus on the fact that I'm alive, that we have this deep friendship, that we have this respect that we've developed over 15 years. I can focus on the fact that your audience probably, they may be frustrated, but they're probably a group of patient people.
And
I can
you're
focus
getting
on
a
the,
great
yeah,
message. Yes.
there's always something healthy to focus on.
Yes. Yes, Jibby, finding the positive in those miserable moments. That's exactly true. And this isn't even a miserable moment. I don't like that it glitches, that we can't get all the content perfectly, but it's still, you're getting the vibe. And really, they say people don't remember what you said, they remember the feeling they felt, and the feeling in your passion comes across so strong. So, that's what we're going to focus on.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, how can the law of attraction improve the lives of those listening?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand that it does work, and my TED Talk really goes into that. The second is to realize that it's also not something that we can do casually.
Mhm.
You can start casually, but it really is a practice. It really does involve respecting the fact that better things happen when you're in a better state of mind. So how do you choose to be in a better state of mind? You asked me earlier about my morning practice. Well, I try not to get out of bed until I'm in a good place. So
Mm.
I start by appreciating things. So I even have a phrase that I use, which is beach, for breathe, enjoy, appreciate, celebrate, and honor.
I
So the
love
breathe is just, you start with the breath. Appreciate is appreciate anything around me that I really like. Enjoy is enjoy any experience that comes my way. Celebrate is just celebrating life itself, that I'm here. And honor to me is about being present and honoring the moment, honoring the experience. So I start thinking like that, and then I do some visualizations, and I imagine some of the outcomes I want during the day. And in the imagining, I try to feel as if I've already received that and that experience has already happened. And I try to be in that elevated state of mind. And then I try to stay there for as long as I can. And then I'll get out of bed. I'll meditate to sort of cement it. And then I'll get out of bed.
How long do you meditate?
I'll confess, I meditate for like 5-minute bits. I would like to meditate for longer, but I don't want to be dishonest with your audience. But 5 minutes is a great start. And I do it 3 or 4 times a day.
No, that's wonderful. I try to meditate an hour a day because I went to Joe Dispenza's workshop. But The days I don't or can't or whatever, shouldn't say can't because I always get up earlier, but the days I choose to sleep longer because I value sleep too. If I'm getting home late, I try to do it at least 5 minutes a day just so I have consistency. So now I've been meditating for over 800 days, because I'll do it for 1 minute. I'm just going, I don't have time. Let me just nam myoho renge kyo, whatever. So
You
1
can
minute.
too.
1 minute. So then I'm like, okay, check. I keep my streak going. So
yeah, I think being consistent is the most important thing.
yes.
One of my meditations of this morning was the idea that I want to get to a place of complete calm and peace, and recognizing that I'm very often not there. I go through my days very often with just a low level degree of stress that I believe that I've sort of made some peace with. Just this morning, I decided to stop making peace with that low level of stress and to just keep regulating myself until I get to that real calm. Again, I don't feel like I need to be in that calm place the whole day. Excitement isn't necessarily calm. But I want to use that sort of like, like a Roomba has a home base.
Yes.
That, when it needs to be charged, it always goes back to that spot and it charges up. I want to know as solidly as I can what that space feels like for me so I can come back to it whenever I want.
Yes. And I think happiness for me is really being at peace. I like being melancholy. Some of my best writing comes from that. I like feeling those emotions. If I'm in a breakup, I don't want to just go, oh, let me laugh it off. I want to feel it and go into it and what happened and why and write about it, meditate, and then, pull myself out of it. I love playing melancholic music and, getting to the deep root of your core. Because if you don't pull from all these other parts, you're going to be superficial. You can't just be la, 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 that's fake, because life, if you turn on the news, you're going, every second. It's like, and you go, okay, we get to play. This is just a playground. If it was always, bells and whistles and butterflies and rainbows, we'd be bored out of our mind. So, okay, we get all these challenges thrown at us, but isn't that exciting? And now how am I going to choose to unravel this and move on with my day when there's tragedy, there's everything. And I know a lot of people listening to this have probably had horrific situations. And I think it's important to feel those and write about it. And I love what you do, writing. And I love writing. When you write it down, you get to be the narrator of your story, and you get to rewrite it in a way that you're the hero of your story. You are the star, not the victim. And I think that is so healing. That's another trick to do.
And I really want to support what you just said, because I really think it's brilliant, and it's an approach that I really hope all your audience will subscribe to on some level. You can be sad. Try to enjoy the sadness. Enjoy the aspects of the sorrow. Indulge it if you want to, but get something positive out of it.
Yes.
Like, for example, my aunt died 3 weeks ago, and she was a teacher at the High School of Performing Arts in New York City, and just a great, vibrant human being. And she died suddenly like that. She just exited the body. And my cousin is suffering from that immensely. She's my Aunt Sue's daughter, Lisa. But the sadness, I know her sadness comes really from a deep celebration of how great her mother was. A deep celebration and a deep relishing of her. And so she wants to be sad. And she's enjoying the sadness on some level, because that's a way of just honoring the greatness and the loss in her mind.
And bonding in the moment. Bonding with her and being with her in that moment.
And there are some very terrible things happening in the world right now. You and I are more than aware of them. Your audience is an educated audience. They are too.
Yes. So it's doing.
When I look at some of the miserable things, I'm grateful for my values. Yes. When I look at some of the miserable things, I try to imagine the opposite. So what Abraham Hicks will say, and the law of attraction will say, is that anytime something negative happens, the opposite desire is born in that instant, just like that. So if someone like Trump gets elected, and forgive me because there may be members of your audience who like him, for me, Trump was a bad thing. But in that moment, somebody who I find to be not dependable and I think nefarious on many ways there was a desire born for the opposite of that. And so I focus on how there's pressure now building to counter a lot of what is going on in Washington and a lot of what's going on. There's pressure building to flip that script. And I focus on that. And I focus on, okay, well, this I don't like, but it's giving birth to something that I will like. And the more I can visualize the outcome that I want, the more I'm energetically contributing to that outcome happening.
Yeah, you're glitching a little bit again.
Shoot.
I know, just the more you like, than just the last part.
Okay. The more you focus on the outcome that you want, the more you energetically contribute to that outcome happening.
Mm-hmm.
So when I focus on the type of leadership I want in the world and the type of results that I want in the world, instead of focusing on what's happening that I don't want, when I focus on what I want,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm contributing to that happening. I'm also
Yes.
feeling better.
And when you
and I'm feeling more hopeful.
Podcasts, and when you do your talks, and when you write your screenplays and speeches, putting that in, you're helping others do the same. Because we could sit and go, oh my God, all this fear. Or you could say, what's the opposite of fear? Let's take action and let's create from scratch what we want to see the world looking like, or America looking like. And now we have this opportunity because no one thought it could get this chaotic for whatever reason, but we are chaotic and the world is chaotic. And if America's not the leader and a moral compass at all, then, it's free for all, especially with AI, which is what you talk about, and the internet. And
Well, and that's also why I think what you're doing here on this podcast, with and without me, is so very important. As I was saying to you before we began, we're dealing with some worldly problems that are so immense that we have to start looking at some otherworldly solutions. And that doesn't mean fake solutions. It doesn't mean woo-woo solutions. It means we need an uplifting, a spiritual uplifting, and a spiritual awareness. And the more we can do to increase that likelihood, and the more we can contribute to that, I think the better shot we've got.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So how can all of this, the lives of those listening, what are 3 steps or something someone can do who is not so familiar with law of attraction, or it doesn't have a big voice, but they want to contribute in some way? Like, you already have a platform and you're established in many areas. So if someone is in their early 20s saying, I don't even want to go to college, because I'm hearing that a lot in my coaching, because there's, I'm going to just be in debt, or I won't even be able to go. Is there going to be a world war? And I'm going to have to, it's all this stuff. Or am I going to get beaten up or bullied? Or so what do you tell people that want to be you, have your career, have your voice, have your success, even on a smaller level?
I would start with the fact that even for me and for people like you as well, our practice is where we start ourselves. So the biggest thing that I even do, regardless of whatever platforms I have, the biggest thing that I feel like I do for the world is by up-leveling myself. I'm always working on being a better person. I'm always working on being a more grounded person, a more forgiving person, a kinder person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the way to do that, what we could all do right now is take a moment. I encourage anybody listening, just take a moment and ask yourself how you're feeling right now. How do you really feel? Check in with yourself. And then ask yourself, okay, what can I focus on right now that can make me feel even better? Is there something beautiful in my life I want to think about? Is there a beautiful outcome I'd like to see? Is there hope and respite around the corner that I can imagine already having come to me? And then just take that moment and let that sink in. And then check in again. How do you feel now? That little process of checking in, elevating, checking in is something that I try and do as often as I can over the course of the day. It doesn't take any real effort.
Yeah. What happens if someone has so much anxiety and they check in? How do they calm that anxiety?
I would say you start by honoring it. There was even an article in the New York Times a couple of days ago that you can start by just labeling it. Just say it aloud. I'm feeling anxious because of this. I'm not saying deny your feelings at all. That's just spiritual bypass.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
saying be aware of your feeling, label it, be present, and then just set it aside for a moment and ask yourself, what can I think about? What can I focus on that might make me feel a little better? That's it. And then try that. And then check in again and see if there's some improvement. One of the things I say in the TED Talk is this is the spiritual equivalent of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. This is cognitive behavioral therapy for the soul. We're focusing on our thoughts because our thoughts affect our feelings and our feelings affect our outcomes. The better we can, the more positive things we can focus on, the better we can feel, the better our results. That's the law of attraction.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that with the audience. How can they find you? I know they just put it up on the screen, but why don't you share different platforms, or if someone wants to get in touch with you? Do you coach people?
I do do some coaching. I'm going to be on another podcast on Tuesday with Brianna Brown called Manifesting Your Mission.
Oh, I love
Um,
Brianna. I was on her podcast.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
And so, and I guess if you go to my website, you can, and I'm also got a Substack that's coming out. So a lot of this will just be on my website. So go to rogerwolfson.com or go to YouTube and look for Roger Wolfson and you'll see my TED Talk.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today. I feel so honored with everything you shared to everyone and to my audience. And I look forward to connecting with you maybe this Saturday or another time soon.
We will get together in my amphitheater or your living room for some of the great events that you and I both put together.
Yes.
And that's what I said before. You are a kindred spirit, Lisa. I adore you.
Thank you. I adore you too. Thank you so much.
Have a beautiful day.
I'm Lisa Haysha, creator of Soul Blazing. I hack how you can change the negative thoughts in your head that hold you back. I call them imposters. I introduce you to them, teach you how to befriend them, and co-create with them, releasing old negative narratives. As a keynote speaker at your next event, I'll help your team turn into master communicators with more camaraderie, which brings more efficiency and growth to your organization. So join me and make shift happen.